There's something unsettling about beach houses. Maybe it's the way the crashing waves drown out everything else, or how the wind whistles through the wood in just the right way to make you feel watched. I used to think they were peaceful, ideal getaways from the chaos of everyday life. But after what I experienced in Bar Harbor, Maine, I can't look at a beach house the same way ever again. This happened 2 summers ago in a house I was asked to look after. The place belonged to Melissa, a friend of my mom's who had recently inherited it from her aunt who'd passed away. Melissa hadn't spent much time in the house since inheriting it, so she asked me to stay for a week, check in on things, and take care of some light upkeep. I was 24, unemployed, and drowning in post-grad anxiety, so a free week at the coast sounded like the perfect mental reset. From the outside, the house was beautiful, classic New England architecture with faded gray siding, a wraparound porch, and a stunning ocean view. Inside, it was a little dusty and outdated, but cozy. I settled into one of the guest bedrooms upstairs, the only room that didn't look like it belonged in a 1970s horror film, and spent the first couple of days walking the beach, reading, and trying not to think about how directionless my life had become. Things took a turn on the 3rd night. I was lying in bed around midnight, the only sound being the distant, rhythmic crash of the waves outside when I heard something inside the wall next to me. At first, it was a soft knock, barely noticeable, but it was enough to jolt me upright. I held my breath, thinking maybe the house was just settling. Old beach homes do that, right? But then I heard it again. 2 knocks this time, slow, deliberate. It was coming from the wall behind my bed. Trying to brush it off, I walked over to inspect the wall, tapping on it lightly. It sounded solid, just regular drywall, but there was a strange, faint vibration beneath it, like something moving behind the surface. Still, nothing obvious. I stood there for a moment longer, half expecting something else to happen. But the sound stopped. I convinced myself it was just pipes or the wind. Still, I slept with the lights on. The next night was worse. Around 2 a.m., just as I was dozing off after watching a movie on my laptop, I heard something again. This time it wasn't knocking. It was a voice. Low, muffled, a whisper. I sat up immediately. The whispering was faint, but I could tell it was coming from the same wall. It sounded like someone repeating the same phrase over and over, too soft for me to make out the actual words. My heart started racing. I turned on the lamp and scanned the room. Nothing. Everything was as I had left it. But then I noticed something strange. In the far corner, along the baseboard, there was a small gap and uneven seam, like a panel that didn't sit quite right. It hadn't been there before, or at least I hadn't noticed it. I crouched down and pressed against it, but it didn't move. Still, it gave me an awful feeling. I ended up retreating downstairs to the living room, where I sat with every light on, wide awake until morning. Later that day, I called Melissa to ask if she knew about any hidden crawl spaces or odd architectural quirks in the house. She seemed confused, saying she'd barely explored it herself and that her aunt had kept to a very strict routine, rarely using the upstairs rooms except to sleep. She did mention that the master bedroom had always given her a bad vibe and was usually kept locked. I decided to check it out. The master bedroom door was locked, but I found an old brass key tucked in a jewelry box in the closet of my room. Inside, the master was exactly what you'd expect from a time capsule: heavy curtains, thick layers of dust, and furniture that hadn't moved in years. One item stood out, a large antique wardrobe pushed awkwardly against the far wall. It didn't fit the space naturally. Curious, I pushed it aside. Behind it was a door, narrow, almost hidden. There was no knob, just a keyhole. The moment I saw it, the whispering returned. Louder, closer. It was coming from behind the door. I didn't have the key, and at that moment I wasn't interested in finding it. That night I chose to sleep on the couch again. Or rather, tried to sleep. My nerves were completely shot. At exactly 3:17 a.m., I woke up to something that still haunts me. It was the same voice. Only this time it was clear. It said, "Let me out." Not whispered, not muffled, spoken, a deep, angry male voice. I sat frozen on the couch, every instinct screaming at me to run, but something else pulled me upstairs. Some reckless curiosity, I guess. When I reached the master bedroom, the wardrobe had been moved. Not by me, and the hidden door behind it was wide open. Inside was a narrow crawl space, dark, cramped, and cold. The whispering was louder than ever, echoing within the walls like the house itself was speaking. I stared into the blackness, something primal inside of me screaming to run. And this time, I listened. I grabbed my bag, keys and wallet, and didn't even bother turning off the lights. I drove 40 minutes to a roadside motel and stayed there until Melissa arrived with a locksmith and two of her friends the next day. They went into the crawl space. Behind it, they found a hidden room, no windows. Just a bare concrete floor, old chains bolted to the corners, and scratch marks on the wood. In a rusted metal box, they found unmarked VHS tapes. Melissa didn't want to watch them. I didn't either. She had the room sealed and hired a contractor to gut the entire top floor. We don't talk about that house anymore. Melissa never stayed another night in it, even after renovations. She eventually sold it at a loss. As for me, I still wake up some nights at exactly 3:17 a.m., hearing that voice in the back of my head. Let me out. It wasn't my story originally. It happened to someone I know, Jake, a quiet, logical guy who worked as a technician for a home security company. We met in college and stayed friends, mostly bonding over horror movies and weird tech gadgets. So when Jake told me this story last summer, and I saw the way his hands trembled and his eyes avoided mine, I knew it was something real. Something that had stuck with him in the worst possible way. Jake and his girlfriend Amanda were invited to spend a weekend at Amanda's cousin's beach house in Charleston, South Carolina. The cousin, Vanessa, was out of town for work and needed someone to check in on the place after a recent break-in in the area. The timing was perfect. Jake had just come off a 60-hour work week, and Amanda wanted some time away from the city. The house was beautiful, modern but cozy, built just far enough from the beach to avoid the tourist noise, but close enough to hear the ocean if the windows were open. It had 3 floors, all furnished, with glass balconies and smart home features controlled by a central hub near the kitchen. Jake, being the tech guy, found it fascinating. He loved exploring how the place was wired and made sure the cameras, alarms, and motion sensors were working properly. The first night was uneventful. They cooked dinner, watched a show, and then turned in early. According to Jake, he slept like a rock at least until about 4:12 a.m. That's when the beeping started. It was loud. Not ear-splitting, but unmistakable, a steady, mechanical beep coming from upstairs. At first, he thought it was a smoke detector. But the house had smart smoke alarms that communicated with the system, and there were no alerts on the hub. Confused, he grabbed his phone and went upstairs to investigate. The sound was coming from one of the guest bedrooms on the 3rd floor, a room they hadn't even entered since arriving. When Jake opened the door, he found the room completely undisturbed, nothing out of place, nothing obviously wrong. But the beeping was louder now coming from the bed, more specifically under one of the pillows. He walked over cautiously and lifted the pillow. Beneath it was a small black device, no bigger than a deck of cards. Matte plastic, no screen. Just a single red LED blinking on the side and a recessed button on the top. Jake picked it up carefully. The device was warm, like it had been running for hours. He turned it over, trying to find a brand name, a model, number, anything. There was nothing. Amanda came upstairs just as he pressed the button. The beeping stopped instantly. "What is that?" she asked. Jake shrugged. "No idea." The room felt colder suddenly, like the air was moving wrong. That's when Jake noticed something else. The window on the far side of the room was open, not cracked, wide open. And it had rained earlier that night. But the floor beneath the window was dry. That didn't make sense, unless someone had opened it after the storm. Jake and Amanda looked at each other, the realization sinking in. The device wasn't a forgotten toy. It wasn't left behind by the owner. It had been placed there. By someone. They backed out of the room, closing the door, and immediately checked the rest of the house. That's when they saw it. Every window on the 3rd floor was wide open. All of them. Downstairs? Closed, locked, perfectly normal. Upstairs? It looked like someone had either just broken in or was still inside. They called the police, trying to stay calm, huddled together near the front entrance with the lights turned off. Jake armed the house security system manually through the app, locking all doors and engaging the motion sensors. Within 10 minutes, 2 officers arrived. The police swept the house thoroughly. Every room, closet, and even the attic. No one was found. But the evidence was undeniable: muddy prints on the upstairs balcony, a trail leading from the back of the house to the sand dunes behind the property, and, most disturbingly, a second device found hidden under the mattress in the same room. Same shape. Same LED, same faint beeping. It wasn't a smoke detector. It wasn't a smart sensor. When one of the officers examined it, he noted that the device had a built-in microphone and appeared to have been custom modified. No serial number, no manufacturer, just a miniature battery pack and a transmitting chip, something built by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Jake and Amanda didn't sleep for the rest of the night. They packed up, left the house before sunrise, and never returned. Vanessa, the cousin who owned the home, changed all the locks, upgraded the security system, and had all the windows reinforced. But here's the scariest part. 3 weeks later, Jake got a call from Amanda. She had been sorting through her travel bag when she found something odd tucked between her clothes. It was the third device. Same shape, same LED, same soft beep. Someone had followed them, planted it, possibly while they were asleep, maybe even before they arrived. To this day, Jake has no idea who did it or why. He suspects it wasn't random, that maybe someone had been testing the security system or him. As of now, none of the devices have been traced, no fingerprints, no connection to other break-ins in the area, just silence, and that cold, mechanical beep echoing through the dark when you least expect it. This story isn't mine either. It was told to me by someone named Tara, a friend of a friend kind of connection, but I remember every word she said, because the way she told it made my skin crawl. It wasn't just the story itself. It was the way she hesitated when describing certain moments, like her brain was trying to protect her from having to relive it. Tara had recently graduated and moved back in with her parents to regroup and figure out her next move. One of her closest friends, Lindsay, invited her on a weekend getaway to her family's beach house in Outer Banks, North Carolina. The plan was simple: relax, decompress, and reconnect before everyone got too busy with adult life. There were 5 of them total: Lindsay, Tara, and 3 other girls they all knew from college. For the most part, it felt like a throwback to simpler times. No responsibilities, no pressure, just the sun, sea, and late-night gossip. The beach house sat on a quiet strip of coastline, far from the popular tourist areas. It was secluded in a way that made it feel special, like their own private retreat. The first day was calm. They unpacked, swam, laughed, and drank wine by the fire pit as the waves whispered in the background. It was the kind of scene you'd see in a travel brochure. That night, they all slept deeply, lulled by the sounds of the ocean and a few too many drinks. But the second day changed everything. That afternoon, 2 of the girls, Jess and Carolyn, decided to go for a walk along the beach while the rest stayed back to cook. When they returned about an hour later, they were beaming. They'd met 3 guys near the dunes, early 30s, friendly, flirty, and apparently staying at a nearby rental just a few properties down. The girls invited them to hang out later that evening. Tara wasn't thrilled about it. Something about the guys sounded too good to be true, but she didn't want to kill the mood, so she kept her doubts to herself. That night, the group met up with the guys on the beach. They brought drinks, played music from a Bluetooth speaker, and made a bonfire in a small pit near the dunes. Everything seemed fine at first. The men were polite, charming even. Too charming. Tara noticed that they asked a lot of questions about the beach house, how long they were staying, if it was just the 5 of them. At first, it sounded like small talk, but then it became a pattern. Personal, intrusive questions cleverly disguised as conversation. As the night went on, the group thinned out. Lindsay wasn't feeling well and went back to the house early. Tara stayed behind with the others for a bit, but her unease only grew. One of the guys Tom kept sitting too close to her. She tried to laugh it off, pretending she wasn't uncomfortable, but it was clear he wasn't getting the hint. Then her phone buzzed. It was a FaceTime request from Lindsay. When Tara answered, she was met with a shaking, tear-streaked face. Lindsay's voice was trembling as she whispered, "You need to come back, now." Tara's stomach dropped. She could hear movement and panic in the background of the call. Lindsay was hiding in the upstairs bathroom with the lights off. Through broken whispers, Lindsay explained that she had woken up to the sound of someone moving inside the house. She assumed it was one of the girls at first, but then she heard a man's voice. Two of them, actually, whispering, laughing. She heard footsteps outside her bedroom, and when she peeked through the cracked door, she saw Jess being led down the hallway by two of the guys from the beach. Except Jess looked unconscious. Tara didn't wait. She ended the call and sprinted back to the house, breath sharp and hands shaking. She tried to call the others, but no one picked up. The house, when she arrived, was dark. She crept in through the back door, grabbing the heavy iron fireplace poker they'd left near the back porch. Upstairs, she found Lindsay still hiding, locked in the bathroom. She looked terrified. They didn't speak, just nodded at each other and headed back down the stairs. That's when they heard a car door slam. Peering through the front window, they saw two of the guys from earlier loading something into the trunk of a black SUV. Tara couldn't see exactly what it was, just limbs, human, bound. Lindsay dialed 911, barely able to explain what was happening through her sobs. But to their credit, the police arrived quickly, and they got there just in time. As the SUV was pulling away, two squad cars blocked the road. The men tried to lie at first, said it was all a joke, that everyone had been drinking and they were just helping someone passed out. But the officers weren't buying it. When they opened the trunk, they found Jess and Carolyn, both bound, gagged, conscious but terrified. The police arrested all three men. Later, it turned out the men weren't renting a beach house nearby. In fact, they weren't even staying in the area. Their car had out-of-state plates, and none of them had identification. A deeper investigation revealed disturbing evidence on one of their phones, videos of other women, screenshots of travel plans, and forums discussing how to scout targets at beach towns during peak vacation seasons. Tara didn't sleep for days after that. The beach, once her sanctuary, now haunted her. Even years later, she refuses to go near sand dunes. She doesn't drink around strangers, doesn't trust casual friendliness. She told me the last thing she remembers about that night was watching the SUV drive away under flashing police lights, knowing how close they had come to vanishing forever. There are places in this world that lull you into feeling safe. The beach, with its beauty and calm, can be one of them. But danger doesn't always knock. Sometimes it waits quietly behind a friendly smile and drags you away before you even realize what's happening.